I will man the, okay. Oops, you recorded it. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. Let's, today. And we've started the recording and I'm going to step out and actually, Tessa, I'm handing it over to you. Thank you for letting me participate and start the webinar.
Thank you so much, Susan. And thank you everyone who has joined today, this afternoon with us to discuss the Member Agency Planning, Implementation, and Innovation Grant Program webinar. I'm joined by Dan Bertoldi. If you want to take a second to introduce yourself, Dan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Bertoldi, Manager of Energy Programs here at Central Coast Community Energy. Happy to be here today. Happy to have you here as well.
Thanks, Dan. My name is Tessa Tobar. I am the Energy Programs Analyst for Central Coast Community Energy with an emphasis on transportation and this grant. So let's go ahead and jump into it today as I, of course, navigate the slides. So we're going to start with our agenda. So we had brief introductions, and next we have an overview of the Electrification Innovation Grant Program with the scope, grant amounts, process, timeline, and of course, most of the time we'd like to dedicate to questions that you may have so that we can go ahead and answer them for you. So when we're looking at this grant, we're inviting proposals that advance specific and measurable outcomes in the two following categories of this grant. The first one being planning and implementation, and the second one being innovation. So when it comes to the planning and implementation category of this grant, we're really looking to support our CCCE member agencies by funding planning and or implementation of electrification related capital improvement projects, or CIP. This could potentially look like, our local governments electrifying their vehicle fleets, municipal properties, community infrastructure that serves households, and so forth. So I wanted to provide some examples. You'll notice this is quite a lofty list, but as Susan mentioned, we'll be providing the slides and the recording if you'd like to come back and visit these. This is a wide net, as you'll notice, so I'll just list off a couple, starting with assessing or demonstrating the viability of a key electrification, or rather of key electrification technologies and related best practice approaches. Utilize local authority to adopt building energy codes, advocating for EV charging infrastructure in newly constructed commercial and multifamily buildings, and so forth. So that is the planning and implementation examples. And then we're going to hop into, of course, the innovation piece of this grant. So innovation is also a very wide net. We want to provide funding for our member agencies, again, to deploy new and innovative electrification or other energy related technologies for our munis or community buildings and or fleets. We're hoping this will foster market transformation, demonstrate scalable and replicable solutions, and identify potential future CCCE energy program concepts. So a couple other things I wanted to mention. This is not intended to support microgrids. If there's a concept that doesn't fit squarely in the previous category of planning and implementation, then we ask that you email us, communicate with us, and hopefully it'll fall in this innovation category instead. We want, again, for it to demonstrate potential CCCE energy program concepts. So if you have a fun and exciting idea that you feel is innovative, we could take that, learn from it based on this grant, and then potentially implement it or employ it for our own services and serve our customers and community. But lastly, it needs to support CCCE's JPA goals, which we have listed on our website for you to review. Now I'm going to share some examples of what an innovation grant application could look like. So it could be regarding vehicle to grid integration, innovative stakeholder engagement and outreach regarding electrification, supporting the optimization or utilization of electric fleets, and so forth. Again, this is a wide net, so if you have any questions regarding if your application would be considered innovative, because it doesn't quite fit in the planning and implementation, we ask that you reach out to us and we'll provide our contact information at the end as well. So this is the part that everyone would like to know about, I'm sure. We have a total budget of $600,000. The maximum grant award is $150,000. So as you can see, we potentially fund about 4 projects. And before I pass it off to Dan, I wanted to go briefly over eligible expenses. So you'll see the list here. I'll focus on the ineligible. The grant does not cover travel costs, overhead, or other indirect project expenses. However, it does, cover eligible staff time spent working directly on your approved project, marketing outreach, supplies, materials, and other direct project and program related expenses. So with that, thank you, and I'll pass it to Dan.
Thanks, Tessa. In order to apply, we ask that you submit a series of documents along with your application. 3 of these documents we provide templates for, which are available either on the website or on the application itself. So you really can't miss them. You must use the templates for numbers 1, 2, and 3. I'll quickly go over those. So the proposal narrative is where you provide written info about your project and you answer some of the questions that we have. The redlined draft agreement. So this is a template agreement that we provide, that we ask that you provide basically red lines through track changes to fill in the blank sections that are highlighted in yellow. And we also ask that you fill out an Exhibit A scope of work along with it. This gives us an idea of really what the project looks like in terms of its contract. I do want to note that, just because you're filling this out doesn't mean that these changes would be applied should we go to approve your project. It just gives us a sense of what you're looking for in a grant agreement. Also, a proposal budget. This is really, it's a fairly straightforward run-of-the-mill budget that we provide for you to fill out to let us know how the money is going to be spent. And then finally, a project schedule. Again, pretty straightforward. This you can provide us in either Excel or Word format and using a design of your choosing. And we just ask that you provide information about the timeline of the project. One suggestion here, you don't need to use exact dates for the schedule, rather using project weeks or project months, some type of time increment that isn't really tied to a date, just because everything hinges on a grant agreement in any case, and those dates will inevitably most likely change. Also, another suggestion, just kind of across all of these different deliverables to your application, it's very helpful for us if you tie in the tasks, deliverables, and milestones kind of across all of these documents. They should really all align. For instance, between the scope of work of the grant agreement, if you have different tasks listed out there, that should also reflect what's in the budget and what's in the schedule, just to make it easier for us to know what you're talking about. I think the key word is really to just be explicit in letting us know what all of those tasks, deliverables, or milestones are going to be. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the scoring criteria, kind of what we're looking for. We have 4 different, basically, categories. I'm not going to read every word here, but kind of going through it quickly. We're looking at problem scope. How does that proposal advance electrification for your organization or the community? So it could be either on the municipal side or for the services that you provide the community. We're looking at how well you're laying out the project goals and objectives. Are they basically SMART goals? Are they specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound? We do have an equity component that we are looking for. It isn't a hard and fast requirement to apply, but it is something that definitely we are going to be scoring on. Does this proposal reach underserved communities? And finally, project feasibility for really we are looking at how well the proposal is developed. Does this demonstrate a project that is feasible? This is for, I forgot to mention, this is for the planning and implementation side. There is one difference, and if you could go to the next slide, please, Tessa, between the scoring criteria for planning and implementation and as opposed to innovation. And that's the first one, the problem scope. How well does it foster market transformation? How well does it demonstrate scalable and replicable solutions for electrification and or energy related technology? And does the proposal identify or demonstrate potential future CCCE program opportunities, basically? If you can go to the next slide, please. So just regarding the timeline, we would like for applications to be submitted by February 7th. This application has been open for some time. We know that this is coming up soon, but we do ask that applications come in by the 7th. And our timeline in order to basically turn everything around is at this point to be determined. We would like to be able to have awards come out within 1 to 2 months to have at least our awardees picked out. But at this time, we may be working with an ad hoc committee that is to be determined, and that may stretch the timeline out a little bit more. In any case, we're going to do our best to turn around the application as quickly as we can. And certainly keep in touch with us at the programs@3ce.org email. Okay. Now is the time that we will move to Q&A. Just a little housekeeping here. We ask that you use the raise hand function, or if you want to type your questions in the Q&A chat box, you're welcome to do so. And we will try to get through as many questions today as we can. We are going to provide written responses to all the questions today, and any questions that we might get through email, and we'll make those available on our website as quickly as we can. So why don't we just go ahead? I'm going to hand it off to Kevin to help us moderate some of those raised hands.
Thanks, Dan. So far, it's just one, Ashley Watkins. However, I don't think I have the ability to unmute folks as just a measly participant.
I just unmuted her, and then I just allowed her to talk, and she unmuted.
Beautiful.
She's ready to go.
Wonderful. Go ahead, Ashley.
Hi, guys. Yeah, just a quick question. I just want to confirm that if we're applying for funds to electrify our fleet, that we don't need to consider any of the incentives already available through the member agency light duty vehicle electrification program. Like, we don't need to back that out of what our ask might be through this grant application.
Yeah, that's a great question. Our funds can be, they definitely can be stackable, but they can't be double dipped. Let me make sure that I get some clarification on that. But just like, my first response would be, you can certainly apply for both, and we will kind of get back to you regarding sort of like what the what we can do in order to make sure that it's supporting the project, but isn't kind of unfair to the other potential applicants.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ashley. Is there any other questions? Go ahead and raise your hand. Seeing none. So there's one question here now in the Q&A. Is there a time frame in which you'd like projects to be completed by?
That's a very good question. We don't have that specifically stated anywhere. We do kind of leave it open. I think, we, in terms of being able to look at project feasibility, we would want probably projects on the shorter timeline, meaning not much more than 1 to 2, potentially 3 years. 3 years actually may be stretching it, and maybe we can provide a little bit more insight in our written response here. But we're certainly not looking for projects that span a significant amount of time. For example, for last year's grant programs for last year's grant recipients that we approved, most of those projects were within a 1 to like a 1.5 year time frame. And I think that's something that we're fairly comfortable with and know is feasible.
If I could add to that, Dan, it begins once the grant agreement is signed by both parties, which you'll already be familiar with given the application process that Dan laid out. Once that is finalized, we'll go ahead and start with the kickoff meeting and proceed. But prior to that, Dan had also mentioned potentially having an ad hoc committee from our CAC. So in terms of the start of when you'll be able to have us both sign that document and move forward for the start of your projects is dependent on the variability of if we'll have an ad hoc or if not.
Yeah, and I do want to point out sort of the case-by-case nature of this grant. We do anticipate kind of a broad range of different projects, project proposals coming our way. And, depending on the project, that's going to kind of dictate what we would want for a time frame, and kind of looking at what you're proposing, and again, just with an emphasis on feasibility. But thank you, Tessa, for adding that. That is an important clarification.
Currently seeing no more questions or raised hands. Yeah, seems like you both did a really good job covering it all.
Great. So if anybody does have any questions, please send us an email, and we will respond. We'll also post these questions that were asked today with just written responses. And we look forward to seeing the project proposals come our way, and look forward to engaging with you on that.
Thank
And
you
Dan,
all.
you would like the emails to be sent to programs@3CE?
That's correct. Yes. Once again, programs@3ce.org is the best contact for us. So we ask that you send any questions there. Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us, and for those who asked questions. We will be ending this meeting right now.
Question there. Are last year's
wonderful.
awardees on your website? Robert asks.
They are not currently on our website. However, they are included in some of our board and CAC meeting minutes available. However, if you send an email to the programs@3CE address, I'd be happy to reach out to you and share that. However, I want to make it clear that this grant is slightly different than our last fiscal year's grant. So those applications may not be as applicable as it would be specifically for this member agency grant program. Thank you for your question. I'm glad you got it in. before I closed out.
All right. You want me to stop the recording?